Deputy Talia, you've threatened, if threatened is the right word to use, a vote of censure against the Chief Minister Ian Gorst. Can you tell us why, what it's all about?
Yeah, I mean, let's put this in context. The Committee of Inquiry into Historic Child Abuse, as it's so called, was commissioned. Well, I say commissioned, it was agreed by the states early 2011. We're still waiting for that to happen, and in the meantime there have been several events that have taken place. Up until now we've still seen no proposition brought by the Council of Ministers for that. Hopefully it will come soon. And it's really because the stakeholders, which include the Jersey care leavers, myself, Senator LeGraley
and all abuse survivors, not just the ones in the Jersey care leavers.
Exactly. It's important to stress that. But promises were made in the past by the former Chief Minister and I think by this Chief Minister that the stakeholders would be kept informed as to developments and would be engaged with at every stage of that, and that hasn't happened. There's been a breakdown at some point. So let's take this back. We know that Verita were originally commissioned to do a report.
Well, shouldn't we just take a step further back, where Frank Walker back in 2007, 2008, 2009 said there was going to be a committee of inquiry?
Yeah, it would have been in 2008. That's when it kind of all broke really publicly. And you're quite right. The then Chief Minister Frank Walker gave a categorical promise, if you like, that we would have a committee of inquiry. That all this, no stone will be left unturned, etc., etc. To the point where the Council of Ministers then issued a report. It wasn't even a proposition saying there will be no committee of inquiry. Thankfully, there were some states members. Initially, Senator LeGraley, myself, Bob Hill at the time, who said no, we need to have a committee of inquiry, and we won the debate in the States, which was surprising enough perhaps.
Because that did seem to a lot of people pretty underhanded and sneaky for the Council of Ministers to bring a report to say that there's no need for a committee of inquiry, because then it couldn't be debated in the States. A little bit, people felt that sneaky and underhanded. Did you feel like that?
I think already at that stage it was the incorrect process, to put it as diplomatically as possible. Sure, it shouldn't have been up to the Council of Ministers to make the decision, 10 individuals. It's something that was so important for Jersey that it should have come to the States Assembly for that decision to be made. Quite rightly, Senator LeGraley put the ball back in the States of Jersey's court, in the Assembly's hands, and they made the decision with the relevant amendments that we should have a committee of inquiry.
Now, what's happened here is, so the Verita, who done a fantastic job with the hospital with their report, Verita were called in by Terry LeSueur, the former Chief Minister Terry LeSueur, to do come up with some terms of reference, and they've published their terms of reference, haven't they? What sort of stage are we at now?
Well, have they published them? I think
Rico Sorda has.
I think there's a report out there somewhere. It's not been published officially. And so there was a process that was being followed. So, with all the faults perhaps of the outgoing Chief Minister, he did at least engage in a process. He made sure that all the stakeholders were kept informed. He engaged Verita in an open way, and everybody who wanted to was allowed to go and talk to Mr. Marsden and his team to give their evidence and to give their opinions. And then after that we didn't really hear much. I've learnt that Verita delivered their report to the Council of Ministers. It would have been around November time last year. So
November 2011,
so almost a year now. And no one heard anything back. Verita didn't hear anything back from them. Not even a basic courtesy call to say thank you for your report, we've considered it, we're not going to be pursuing it, nothing at all. And then I only find out in May this year that I'm being asked to talk to Mr. Williamson. So I go and talk to Mr. Williamson. I speak to yourselves, to the care leavers, to Bob Hill, and say, so have you been invited? When will you go and see Mr. Williamson? Only to find out that they're none the wiser.
Nobody knew that Andrew Williamson had been commissioned by Chief Minister Ian Gorst.
No, that's right.
And secrecy again.
And also no real reasons have been given as to why we've needed a second review. Why has Mr. Williamson been brought in, presumably to review Verita's terms of reference? when those terms of reference haven't even been published.
Because here's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And I asked it of Andrew Williamson, and he couldn't answer me. Even he couldn't answer me. Why has he been commissioned in the first place? If there was something wrong with the Verita terms of reference, why didn't it get sorted out with Verita? Why have Verita just been put out to grass?
That's the question we need to ask. And so I've asked the Chief Minister some basic requests. The first one is that both reports be published. I've got several emails in front of me here which have been of correspondence between myself and the Chief Minister and other States members.
You get replies to your emails from the Chief Minister?
I get replies. They haven't been satisfactory up until now. For example, I emailed in August saying, can we have both reports please so we can read them?
That's the Verita and Williamson.
And the Williamson Report,
suggested terms of reference.
That's right, because the Council of Ministers have had the Williamson Review report and the terms of reference since at least the beginning of August. It may have been earlier. So it's not really right for them to sit on them when other stakeholders should be given them to consider. I also made the point in my email on the 6th of August that the summer is a busy time. I say a busy time for States members. A lot of members aren't here, and so it's important that we be given a lot of time to read things in advance. And I only find out when I come back from my holiday on the 26th of August that a meeting had been set up for the 3rd of September, which is today, with Mr. Williamson, and we'd be given that report on the day of the presentation, actually in the presentation. So States members wouldn't have even had a chance to look through it and see if there were any relevant questions, and we certainly wouldn't have been given a copy of the Verita report. The second point is that why was Verita not given a chance to come over and present their report either initially when they presented it to the Council of Ministers back in November, or now? Why don't we get Mr. Williamson and Verita to give their presentations to us on their findings?
Have you suggested this to the Chief Minister?
I have, and he's considering it now.
Considering it?
Given the fact that in my email I said, look, there's been a lot of disquiet about your position, about the fact that there seems to be some stonewalling going on, if I can call it that, and just the process isn't being adhered to. So
again, we're back to the secrecy, aren't we? The States members aren't getting to see any of these reports, aren't getting to see these terms of reference. Isn't this the very thing that enabled the secrecy and behind doors decisions and all the rest of it? Isn't that the very thing that enabled this the child abuse to go on for decades because of the Jersey's secrecy and culture of fear and all that?
Yeah, I mean, the point I would make, if the committee of inquiry is being surrounded by so much secrecy, or at least questionable motivations, why are things being decided at the Council of Ministers at a very high level, but being managed so secretively and so tightly? That doesn't bode well for the eventual committee of inquiry if we ever have one.
Well, that's it, because if you listen to our state media and the rest of it, it's Jersey's reputation comes above everything else. It comes above the child abuse victims in the eyes of our state media and certain politicians and law officers. So it's not going to look very well to the outside world that Jersey's still carrying on the secrecy when it comes to the committee of inquiry, is it?
Yeah, I think that's the point I've made implicitly to the Chief Minister, is that we need the process to be opened up. Promises that have been made in the past have seemingly been broken, and that's not a good start if you're trying to build a committee of inquiry which needs trust in order to function effectively.
So where are we at now?
Well, what I'm hoping is that the Chief Minister, now when he's got some time to sit down and to think, is to actually look at the requests which are being made by myself, by other interested parties, which all seem to be reasonable, which are saying, give us the information, put it out into the public domain, so that we as States members and the interested parties can consider those and actually give you feedback, so that we can have a meaningful and constructive committee of inquiry with meaningful terms of reference.
Is that going to happen?
I hope so, because I think there's a risk now, and this is becoming more of a general consensus, is that the Chief Minister isn't showing the kind of political leadership that he should be and that was expected of him.
Well, let's cut to the chase here, because you said that the Chief Minister will go back and think, do you honestly believe he does think, or he's told what to do? He's not the real Chief Minister. Isn't it a case that there's rumours through the powers, the corridor of powers and the rest of it, that it's Senator Banash that's the real Chief Minister and he's just pulling the strings of Ian Gorst?
There's all sorts of rumours. I would hope that Chief Minister's still fairly early in his current term. And I think that there have been things done which, if he'd have thought about things in a different way, he wouldn't have done things that way. And I think it's not too late for him to change course. That's what I'm hoping. But I think certainly at the moment we've seen several questionable decisions on the Electoral Commission, for example. It had already been
hijacked Electoral Commission.
It had already been agreed that it should be independent, and that was what was voted for by the states. And clearly we have one man who was elected quite clearly with an outcome that was desired, keep the constables in the states, control power, centralised power, if you like, and he's been allowed to, I would say, exert undue influence on the Council of Ministers. After all, it's not Senator Banash who's been elected Chief Minister, it was Ian Gorst.
Well, that's probably for another day. So what is there something positive we can say to the victims of the decades of child abuse, the victims and the survivors? Have we got a positive message we can give them out of this, other than you're chasing up the Chief Minister?
Well, I think what the message to give is that, as always, there are states members in there who take the issue of transparency and holding ministers to account, but also of getting to the bottom of actually what happened in recent times, but also in decades gone past. What went wrong in Jersey? We're committed to finding answers, so this kind of thing, first of all, can never happen again, but also so that we find the answers out and know what kind of changes need to take place in Jersey.
So we need a fully robust terms. We've got to remember the former senior investigating officer Lenny Harper has told us that there's at least 4 priority suspects who are employed by the states in positions of authority now. So, isn't there are going to be quite a number of people who aren't going to want some very robust terms of reference in case it opens up a huge can of worms.
Yeah, I think that's probably true, and it would be true anyway. I think this is why it's key that we just have the correct processes. That's what we're asking for. That's the bare minimum. We want the correct processes to be followed,
which haven't been so far.
They haven't been, certainly in the last part of the processes with since Mr. Williamson was engaged on the Council of Ministers part. But I think that's where we are.